In the cramped, smoke-filled workshop that served as his sanctuary, Reza spent countless hours weaving his magnum opus, the crimson carpet. His fingers moved with a life of their own, as if driven by an unseen force that only he could feel. The air was thick with the scent of wool and turpentine, and the soft glow of candles cast eerie shadows on the walls. Reza's eyes gleamed with an unsettling intensity as he worked, his face twisted into a rictus grin that seemed to hold 1,000 secrets. Few knew that behind this master weaver lay a soul, consumed by darkness, a soul that had made a pact with forces beyond the mortal realm. As the carpet began to take shape, its intricate patterns and colors seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy. Reza's laughter echoed through the workshop, a low, menacing sound that sent shivers down the spines of those who dared to listen. For in his madness, he had woven not just threads of wool, but the very fabric of reality itself. And when at last the crimson carpet was complete, it seemed to whisper a single, chilling word. "Welcome!" Reza's eyes locked onto the crimson carpet, his gaze burning with an unholy intensity. His voice was barely audible, a whisper that seemed to carry on the wind. "This carpet, my finest work, its beauty unmatched, but its secret. Oh, the dye." He paused, his lips curling into a macabre smile. The room grew darker, as if the shadows themselves were closing in. The air thickened with an unseen presence, heavy with the scent of decay and corruption. Reza's fingers seemed to twitch, as if itching to touch the carpet once more. His eyes gleamed with an otherworldly light, a light that seemed to pierce the very soul. "You think you know me, don't you?" he whispered, his voice dripping with venom. "You think I'm just a master weaver, a craftsman of fine fabrics. But no, I am so much more." His smile grew wider, revealing teeth stained with crimson dye. "I am the keeper of secrets, the whisperer of forbidden knowledge." The carpet seemed to pulse in response, its colors deepening into an otherworldly hue. Reza's laughter echoed through the room, a sound that sent shivers down the spines of those who dared to listen. And when he finally fell silent, his eyes locked onto something beyond the horizon, something that only he could see. In the depths of Reza's workshop, where shadows danced across walls and the scent of old parchment wafted through the air, he pored over ancient texts bound in human skin. The flickering candles cast eerie silhouettes on the walls as he studied the forbidden arts, his eyes burning with an insatiable hunger. Muni, his apprentice, watched from afar, her gaze drawn to the intricate patterns and symbols etched into the pages. She felt a growing sense of curiosity, of ambition, as she witnessed Reza's experiments with the most arcane and sinister dyes. The colors he conjured were like nothing she had ever seen before: deep crimson, midnight blue, and an eerie green that seemed to pulse with a malevolent life of its own. As Reza worked, his words became a whispered incantation, the ancient languages weaving together in a dark tapestry of magic and madness. Muni felt her heart racing, her senses heightened as she watched the threads of reality begin to unravel before her eyes. And yet, despite the growing sense of unease that gnawed at her soul, Muni couldn't help but feel drawn to Reza's power. She wanted to be a part of his world, to wield the forbidden knowledge that seemed to radiate from him like an aura. Her ambition grew with each passing moment, until she found herself wondering if the curse he was weaving into the fabric would bring her the power and recognition she so desperately craved. But as the shadows deepened, Muni couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched, that unseen eyes were trained upon her from the darkness. And when Reza finally looked up, his gaze locked onto hers with an unnerving intensity. Mooney felt a shiver run down her spine. Mooney's voice trembled with excitement as she spoke, her eyes locked onto Reza's with an unnerving intensity. "Master Reza, what secret do these colors hold?" She reached out a trembling hand, as if drawn by an unseen force to touch the fabric of the carpet. Reza's gaze never wavered, his eyes burning with an otherworldly energy. He smiled, a slow, sinister smile that seemed to stretch across his face like a crack in the earth. "The colors hold the essence of life and death, Mooney," he whispered, his voice dripping with malevolence. "They hold the secrets of the Ancient Ones, who once walked among mortals and wielded powers beyond your wildest imagination." Mooney felt a shiver run down her spine as Reza's words hung in the air like a challenge. She sensed that she was being drawn into something dark and forbidden, something that would change her forever. "But at what cost?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Reza's smile grew wider, his eyes glinting with a mischievous light. "Ah, Mooney," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "You are so eager to learn, so hungry for power and knowledge. But do you know what it truly costs to wield the forbidden arts?" Mooney hesitated, unsure of how to respond. She felt a sense of trepidation growing within her, as if she was standing at the edge of a precipice, staring into an abyss of unknown horrors. And then, in a voice that sent shivers down her spine, Reza whispered, "The colors will consume you, Mooney. They will devour your soul and leave nothing but ash and despair in their wake." Mooney's heart skipped a beat as she gazed at the carpet, now seeming to glow with an otherworldly light. She knew that she was being drawn into a world of darkness, a world where the very fabric of reality was twisted and distorted beyond recognition. The sun had long since set over the small village, casting a warm orange glow over the thatched roofs and the dusty streets. Reza, the master weaver, sat in his workshop, surrounded by threads of every color, each one telling a story of its own. He was lost in thought, his fingers moving deftly as he worked on a new piece, but his mind wandered back to the rug that had been the source of so much pain. As he worked, he whispered incantations in an ancient language, the words weaving together like the threads of the rug itself. It was a language that few knew, and even fewer understood. But Reza knew its power, and he used it to infuse his creations with a piece of himself. Just as he finished the final thread, a knock at the door broke the spell. Reza looked up, his eyes narrowing as he saw a figure cloaked in shadows standing in the doorway. The air seemed to grow colder, and Reza could feel a presence that didn't belong in his humble workshop. "Can I help you?" Reza asked, his voice firm but wary. The figure stepped forward, revealing a man with piercing green eyes and skin as dark as the night. He was dressed in fine clothes, but there was something about him that reeked of desperation. "I am Yusuf, merchant," he said, his voice slick with feigned admiration. "I have heard of your work, Reza. I must say it's divine." Reza raised an eyebrow, sensing the man's true intentions. He had dealt with many merchants over the years, and he knew how to spot a fake. "What can I do for you, Yusuf?" Reza asked, his tone neutral. Yusuf smiled, revealing sharp teeth. "I'd like to purchase your most exquisite piece, the one that speaks to me." Reza's eyes narrowed. He had made many rugs in his life, but none as precious as the one he was working on now. It held a fragment of his soul, and he knew that if it fell into the wrong hands— "I'm afraid that rug is not for sale," Reza said finally, his voice firm. Yusuf's smile grew wider. "Ah, come now, old man. You're a weaver, not a charity. I'm willing to pay top dollar." Reza shook his head. "I told you, Yusuf, the rug is not for sale. It carries more than beauty. It holds a fragment of my soul, and it's not something that can be bought and sold like a commodity." Yusuf chuckled, the sound sending shivers down Reza's spine. "Ah, I see. You're a romantic, aren't you? But let me tell you, old man, everything has its price. And if you won't sell it to me, perhaps someone else will." Reza felt a surge of anger, but he kept his cool. He knew that Yusuf was not a man to be underestimated. "I'm afraid you'll find no one else willing to buy this rug," Reza said, his voice steady. "It's too precious. And besides, I'd rather die than see it fall into the wrong hands." Yusuf laughed again, and for a moment, Reza thought he saw something in those green eyes that was almost malevolent. "Ah, but that's where you're wrong, old man," Yusuf said, his voice dripping with malice. "I'll take the rug by any means necessary, and when I do, you'll regret ever crossing me." With that, he turned and disappeared into the night, leaving Reza feeling shaken. As the days passed, Reza couldn't shake off the feeling that Yusuf was still out there, waiting for his chance to strike. He kept a close eye on his workshop, but he knew that it wouldn't be enough. One night, under the cover of darkness, Yusuf returned. He crept into the workshop, his eyes scanning the room until they landed on the rug. With a swift motion, he snatched it from the floor and wrapped it around his shoulders. Reza was caught off guard, and before he could react, Yusuf had vanished into the night, leaving behind only the echo of his curse. "May it bring madness to all who dare to call it their own." As the days turned into weeks, Reza heard rumors of strange happenings. People who had seen the rug would become catatonic, their eyes taking on a wild, unhinged look. Some said they heard whispers in the dead of night, tempting them with dark promises. And then there was Yusuf himself. He was last seen wandering into a stormy night, his eyes fixed on some unseen horizon. The winds howled around him, and his clothes were torn apart by the gusts. And when the storm finally passed, Yusuf lay dead on the ground, his body twisted at unnatural angles. The rug, however, was nowhere to be found. But Reza knew better than to think that the curse had been broken. He knew that it would continue to spread its dark influence, drawing in unsuspecting victims like moths to a flame. And he knew that one day someone else would come along seeking to claim the rug for themselves. And when they did, Reza's eyes snapped back into focus, his heart racing with anticipation. He leaned forward, his fingers brushing against the threads of the rug, as if summoning its dark power. The weaving was done, but the true work had only just begun. Alden, a man consumed by his own ambition, laid eyes on the carpet for the first time in years. He had acquired it from Yusuf at a fraction of its true value, sensing an opportunity to add a touch of luxury to his already opulent lifestyle. As he unwrapped the carpet from its velvet wrapping, the room was bathed in a warm, golden light that seemed to emanate from the very fabric itself. Alden couldn't help but feel a sense of pride and satisfaction as he displayed the carpet in his lavish living room, surrounded by priceless artwork and rare antiques. He chuckled to himself as he gazed at the intricate patterns and symbols woven into the carpet's design. A true masterpiece, he thought, his mind racing with the possibilities. This will be the crowning jewel of my collection. But as the days passed, Alden began to notice strange occurrences around him. Small, seemingly insignificant events that would have gone unnoticed by most men. Doors creaking open on their own, faint whispers in the dead of night, and an inexplicable feeling of being watched. At first, he dismissed these events as mere paranoia, a side effect of his own growing wealth and influence. But as the occurrences grew more frequent and intense, Alden couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. And then, one fateful evening, as the room was bathed in an eerie, otherworldly light, Alden caught a glimpse of himself in a nearby mirror. His eyes seemed to be black as coal, his skin deathly pale, and his once ubiquitous smile twisted into a grotesque grin. He stumbled backward, shocked and terrified, as the carpet beneath him began to writhe and twist like a living serpent. The symbols etched into its surface seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy, as if awakening from a deep slumber. Alden realized, too late, that he had made a terrible mistake. The carpet was not a mere decoration. It was a key to unlocking dark forces, ancient powers that lurked beyond the veil of reality. Alden's laughter, once a hearty and confident sound, began to take on a manic quality. His eyes gleamed with an unsettling intensity as he gazed upon the carpet, his mind consumed by visions of power and control. At first, it was just small things. He would find himself repeating phrases from ancient texts or muttering incantations under his breath. But as the days passed, Alden's behavior grew more erratic. He became obsessed with the idea of wielding the Steel Empire, a vast industrial complex that had once been the envy of the nation. His mind clouded by visions of domination, Alden began to make rash decisions. He would dismiss warnings from his advisors or disregard the counsel of those who had known him for years. His obsession with power grew, feeding on his own paranoia and ambition. The carpet seemed to be driving him deeper into madness, its dark energy coursing through the room like a malignant force. The symbols etched into its surface began to pulse with an otherworldly power, as if they were alive and feeding off Alden's corruption. As the weeks passed, Alden's grip on reality began to slip further. His once sharp mind was now clouded by visions of conquest, his sense of self warped by the carpet's dark influence. He became a shadow of his former self, a man consumed by an insatiable hunger for power and control. And yet, despite the danger that lurked beneath the surface, Alden pressed on, driven by a maddening compulsion to claim the Steel Empire as his own. The carpet's curse had him in its grasp, and he was powerless to resist. Elara had always known her husband to be a driven man, but she had never seen him like this. The laughter that once rang out from his lips now seemed to mask a growing unease, a sense of desperation that echoed through the halls of their once peaceful home. As she watched Alden pace back and forth in front of the carpet, his eyes gleaming with an unnerving intensity, Elara felt a growing sense of fear. She had tried to talk to him, to reach out to the man she once knew, but he pushed her away. His mind closed off behind a mask of calculation. The carpet seemed to be exerting some kind of strange influence over Alden, drawing him deeper into its depths with each passing day. Elara could feel it, a dark energy that seeped into every corner of their lives, corrupting everything it touched. She tried to remember the last time she had seen her husband laugh without the carpet's presence, but it was as if that person had been lost forever. The man who had once cherished her, who had made her feel like a queen, was now a shadow of his former self, a puppet controlled by the carpet's sinister will. As the days turned into weeks, Elara found herself trapped in a living nightmare. She could hear Alden's laughter echoing through the halls at night, a sound that sent shivers down her spine. She knew she had to act, but she was powerless against the darkness that had consumed her husband. One thing only seemed certain. If she didn't find a way to stop the carpet's curse, Elara would lose everything she held dear. The question was, where could she turn? Alden's eyes snapped towards Elara, his gaze piercing, as he searched for any sign of deception. For a moment, Elara thought she saw a glimmer of recognition, a flicker of the man he once was. But it was quickly extinguished, replaced by an unnerving intensity. "The rug?" Alden repeated, his voice low and even. "You think this rug is changing me?" Elara nodded, her heart racing with fear. "I know what I've seen, Alden. The way you talk to it. The way you look at it. It's not just a piece of fabric. It's like it's alive. You don't understand, Ilara, he said, his voice dripping with condescension. You don't know what this rug is capable of. It's showing me the true nature of power, of ambition, and I'm not going to let it slip away from me. Ilara felt a shiver run down her spine as she met Alden's gaze. She knew that look, that tone. It was the same one he used when he was determined to get what he wanted, no matter the cost. Alden, please, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. You're scaring me. Alden's expression didn't waver, but his eyes seemed to flash with anger for a moment before they returned to their normal, calculating state. I'm not scared of anything, Ilara, he said, his voice cold and detached. I'm just focused, and you should be too, because once I have what I want, there's no turning back. The air between them seemed to thicken, heavy with tension, as Ilara realized that she might already be too late to save her husband from the carpet's grasp. As the days passed, Alden's withdrawal from society became more pronounced. He stopped answering phone calls, turned off his computer, and sealed himself away in his office. The only sound coming from his room was the soft hum of the carpet's magic, weaving its spell around him like a shroud. Ilara tried to reach out to him, to bring him back from the brink of madness, but Alden was too far gone. He saw her attempts as weakness, as threats to his newfound power. His mind was consumed by visions of wealth and influence, of the steel empire he would soon control. The carpet's influence seeped into every aspect of Alden's life, warping his perceptions and sowing discord wherever he went. His colleagues whispered among themselves, speculating about his sudden disappearance and the strange occurrences that had begun to plague the company. As the weeks turned into months, the carpet's power grew stronger still. It whispered sweet nothings in Alden's ear, tempting him with promises of limitless wealth and destruction of his enemies. And Alden, fueled by his own hubris and greed, became a mere puppet under the carpet's control. One fateful night, as Alden sat hunched over his desk, poring over financial reports and scheming his next move, the carpet's curse finally reached its boiling point. The air was thick with tension, heavy with the weight of Alden's own ambition. As he pored over the numbers, the carpet seemed to seethe beneath him, its fibers burning with an inner fire. Ilara had warned him, but he had ignored her, too consumed by his own greed to listen. But now, as the flames erupted from the carpet's depths, Alden realized too late that he had disturbed a power beyond his control. The room was ablaze, the shadows dancing across the walls like demons. Alden leapt to his feet, panic rising in his chest as he stumbled towards the door. But it was too late. The flames were everywhere, consuming everything in their path. His papers, his desk, even the carpet itself, all were reduced to ashes. As the fire raged on, Alden's own face became alight with a fierce, golden light. It was as if the very essence of the carpet had been unleashed within him, burning away his ego and his ambition until only a shell of his former self remained. The flames, like a living entity, danced around the carpet with an otherworldly precision. They seemed to be drawn to it, as if by an unseen force, leaving its surface untouched and unscathed. Alden's laughter, once a maniacal gleam in his eye, had devolved into screams of despair. He thrashed about, trying to break free from the carpet's grasp, but it was too late. The flames had him cornered, trapping him in a living nightmare. The room, once a symbol of Alden's power and opulence, had transformed into a chamber of horror. The walls, once adorned with expensive artwork, now seemed to closing in on him, their faces twisted into grotesque grins. The furniture, once polished and refined, was now twisted and burned, like the very fabric of reality itself was unraveling. Alden sat in the center, surrounded by the now tattered remains of the rug, his eyes vacant, his whispers silent. "It's gone. The rug. It's gone," he breathed, his voice a ghostly echo of his former self. Alara, tears streaming down her face, whispered, "What have we done, Alden? What has this rug done to you?" Alden, lost to reason, could only stare into the abyss of his mind, his whispers a silent scream in the void. The chamber, once a symbol of wealth and victory, now stood as a monument to despair. The rug was never found, its curse having claimed another victim. The mansion was abandoned, the chamber of madness sealed off, but the story lived on, whispered in the dark alleys of Isfahan as a cautionary tale of greed's dark price. And so, the chamber remained, not just a room, but a warning, a ghostly reminder that some treasures are too costly, not in gold, but in the currency of the soul. The curse of Reza, woven into the fibers of the rug, continued to haunt the memories of those who heard the tale, serving as a lesson against the folly of unchecked desire